My name is Ioanna Trafalis, and I work with the Athens Institute for Education and Research, which is our World Association for Academics and Researchers. We have started a new initiative of interviewing the participants that attend our many conferences in Athens to present their work. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Lisa Rockford, Assistant Professor at Broward College, USA. Hello, Dr. Rockford.
Hi.
Welcome to Athens, and welcome to our series of interviews. How are you?
Good.
Good. So I'd like to start with your presentation at our conference. You present the paper, Science is Mean for Making Contemporary Art. Tell us a few words about it.
Well, the paper basically gives a few examples of recent visual artists who use science, natural sciences, in their art making through either collaborating with scientists or even becoming scientists themselves. Some artists are both scientists and artists. So part of it is to give examples of the fact that art and science are not in antithesis to each other. They are often help each other. They inform each other, and artists are often informing scientists with some of their research and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been many artists who have been informed by science or inspired by it, but there's a large trend now of artists using the sciences in their art making, in creating artworks.
Mm-hmm. So how can science be a mean for making contemporary art? Tell us a few examples so we can understand it
for
better.
example, some of these artists use scientific processes. Like Roger Hjorns used chemistry to create a huge installation that was crystal growth. So he created a whole room you could walk into where the walls and the ceiling and the floor were all crystal growth. And so for him, he was using a scientific process as a means for sculpting. Or there are artists who, for example, work with living creatures to make their art. So for example, I know of several artists who actually use apiology, working with honeybees, and part of that is also a interest in sustaining the environment as well. Since bees support the ecosystem, it helps with that as well. So they work with the bees to create sculptures, and the sculptures are a lasting artifact or an artwork. That they actually created objects that they put in beehives, and the bees sculpt onto those objects and kind of helped create the sculpture. And so some of these methods might seem odd or seem really strange to people who have never seen contemporary art, but contemporary art has gone in a direction in the last 100 years where there's no longer just traditional art materials being used. A lot of artists are using materials that are very non-traditional in the past centuries, would not have been considered art materials.
So who started, is there a specific artist that started this using
No, and
science?
I don't think we can pinpoint where that started, but I'm noticing that there's a trend that a lot of artists are going in the direction of being what we would call interdisciplinary, and I focused in this paper on the natural sciences, but there are several artists who are incorporating all of the STEM fields like science, like technology, engineering, mathematics as well. And part of the interest is just to talk about the fact that this kind of old idea of left brain, right brain, that people are not just one or the other, but they can utilize both.
Very, very interesting. So tell us a few things about yourself, your studies, your career.
Well, I'm a professor in fine arts, and on the side I'm also a curator and an artist, so I organize a lot of art exhibitions, and so part of my interest for this paper had to do with researching artists that I've been interested in. And at the school that I teach at, I've been fortunate to have support to bring a visiting artist series, and so because our campus president was interested in the STEAM idea of the arts being added with the STEM fields, I proposed a visiting artist series of artists who incorporate the STEM fields into their artworks, at least one of the STEM fields. And so I've been fortunate enough to be able to bring artists to our campus in that theme.
Nice. So what's currently your major area of work?
In my own life?
On your own, yes.
I have a background in painting, but I've also done performance and video art and sculpture in different fields, but I kind of end up going back to painting So I have different series, but they usually have to do with how the female body image is represented in marketing and how females experience being looked at for their bodies. So my recent series of paintings is called vein mapping/vein mapping, with the two spellings like vein, V-E-I-N, and V-A-I-N, talking about vanity. And for that series, I actually used a microscopic camera to photograph spider veins in my legs and in my mother's legs.
Okay.
So they're, it might seem strange, but they're things that, for example, might seem, like repulsive things in the media as like ugly marks on your body. And I've been photographing them and enlarging them and painting them. And they look abstract, but if you saw the microscopic image, they look almost like a map in a way. The paintings are derived from the images of the veins. So in my own work, I'm also interested in the sciences in that way and incorporating it, tying it in. But it also, a lot of it refers back to kind of a feminist motivation as well.
I would like to see some of that. Very interesting. So how were you introduced to Athens? And what made you attend the conference?
Right, I actually found it on the internet. I hadn't known about the conference before, and I was really excited to find it because it was so interdisciplinary. And as I mentioned in my paper, I talk about artists being interdisciplinary. And I really liked the fact that the Athens conferences, the Arts and Humanities conference, was multiple disciplines, and it wasn't just visual art. Because in the past, the conferences I've gone to for work or for research were specific to visual art, and I thought, especially because of my recent research, I'd like to see, to look for other conferences to go to. And I also loved, of course, the fact that it was in Athens, and I had never been to Athens before. So I just found it researching on the internet.
Okay. So what's the status of the education system?
In the US, right?
Yes. And what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages?
Well, I don't feel like I'm an expert on being able to comment on the educational system, but just from my own personal perspective, I feel like one of the drawbacks of the education system in the US is somewhat that it's becoming looked at, the philosophy of education in the US somewhat is becoming like a business. Where sometimes, especially I teach at a community college, so sometimes one of the motivations is to offer a cheap education, inexpensive education, and so sometimes that makes other things not as quality or as important as they should be. And so that seems to happen too often in the US, that education is not considered as important as some other countries might value it. So for example, professors and teachers, especially of elementary school or middle or high school, are some of the lowest paying careers you can have in the US. So really, to be a teacher, you pretty much have to really want to be a teacher. And so that is a little bit unfortunate, that it seems like there should be more funding put into education, and because of course, as people are a product of their education, it means that's what kind of a citizen they're going to become in the US, and especially with people's attention spans getting worse over time because of cell phones and everything. Education has to combat that, and so now there's also a direction in education to try to find more engaging ways to keep the student engaged so that they do want to go to school. But there are many schools in the US to choose from, so there are a lot of benefits that there are so many schools that somebody can have a lot to choose from. But especially before college, I think that the education system needs to have a lot more. Well, no, I think it needs to have a lot more improvement in general.
Yeah.
But because I think if we compared the U.S. to other countries, it probably would not measure up as well in the quality of education, personally.
Thank you very much. It was very nice of you.
Thank